City of Socorro City Council is set to begin. Gentlemen, please remove your hats and everyone please silence all electronic equipment. No disruptive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated and violators are subject to ejection and possible prosecution. La Junta del Concilio de la Ciudad de Socorro está para empezar. Caballeros, por favor, quítense los chuchas, sombreros y todos, por favor, ponen en silencio todo el equipo electrónico. No se va a tolerar ningún tipo de comportamiento perjudicial o revoltoso. A quien no siga estas reglas se la sacará y puede ser infraccionado. Gracias.
6:05, the meeting is now called to order. Mr. Medina, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3, establishment of quorum.
René Rodríguez is absent. Cesar Nevares.
Here.
Ralph Duran.
Here.
Mayor Elia Garcia.
Here.
Victor Perez is absent. And Ivan Colombia Lopez.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Item number 4, public comment.
Sergio Cox. Albert Ortiz. Mayor, for the record, Mr. René Rodríguez arrived to the meeting at 6:06.
Good afternoon, City Council, Mayor. I'm just here to, well, I thought some of my neighbors were gonna come with me, but I will, so I'm talking for them. We talked about a speed hump on Arlene Circle a while back, and so it was deemed that it was too short a street. But lately, since they have a speed hump on Patty Joe Street, what's happening is the traffic's now some of it's rerouting through our street, especially UPS. Looks like they're in a hurry to avoid the speed hump. They just go through our neighbor. Mr. Baca was the one that first told me, hey, Albert, is there any way we could get a speed hump? My kid could have gotten hit the other day. It's just a good thing the car was going by slow. You know, they're not even from the neighborhood. People are just avoiding the speed hump on Patty Joe Street. And so we decided to know if we could do another study. And, you know, if you all need to talk to us or anything, or if we need to have a petition, something to maybe get it going. Because we do have some kids, and we have noticed the pickup of traffic bypassing the speed hump. That's all they're doing. And I have one neighbor on Patty Joe, Miss Sandy Saucedo. She can tell you that the speed hump has helped a lot on that street ever since it was installed. So we were thinking, hey, maybe we should use one so they can avoid going through our street at a high rate of speed. That's basically it. Like I said, I invited some neighbors, but well, who knows what happened. But, so thank you for your time. Let's see what happens, okay? So I can let them know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Miriam Cruz. Ms. Cruz, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. I have to say, I hate that I'm having to pick and running back and forth between the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and here. I know that y'all picked this date a while back, knowing that this Thursday was going to be the 4th of July. I would just ask you guys to take into consideration individuals like me that attend both meetings, not having to go back and forth and pick between both. It's just unfortunate. Anyway, I wanted to talk about a couple of things. Same thing that the gentleman just mentioned. There's still speeding going on along my neighborhood of Stockyard. I believe that there are some numbers. The last time that Ms. Rodarte said that Chief could go with, run by me or give me some more information. Regardless of that, there's still a lot of speeding with a lot of different cars, mostly trucks, mostly 18-wheelers, FedEx, UPS, school buses, believe it or not. And at SISD, because it's the only district that is there, so I hope that if SISD watches these, they're listening. And it's just unfortunate. Again, it is summer. Kids are at home. If they're not in a camp, they are at home. And they're walking around and they're going to parks and they're out and about. It's summertime. And the risk is just grown exponentially. And so I hope that we continue to work on a solution for that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, when you guys voted on it, I brought it up, Rio Vista, right here between Thunder and Sparks, where you guys are doing the onion field. I don't believe there was anything in that project that was allowing for Rio Vista to be expanded. Rio Vista between Thunder and Sparks is very, very narrow, very, especially right over the bridge. And so now that you guys are building that onion field and are going to put a wall around it, I had suggested the idea of looking into expanding the road, because once you put a wall, you're very unlikely going to be expanding that road. And to one side is the city property, to the other side are homes. And so there's no wall up yet. There's still excavation happening there. And so I hope that now is the time, if any, even though it's kind of late, for y'all to look into that, because it is a very narrow road. I'm not even sure, Mr. Terrazas isn't here, but I'm not even sure that it's the size that our city, like, you're supposed to be in allowed, what is it, 60 feet? Right? Anyone nodding? No? Pretty sure it's 60 feet. Maybe not, maybe it's shorter, but it's not adequate. It's not an adequate size. What else? Oh, I'll remind you guys to just speak
Ms.
into the
Cruz, your time is
microphone
up.
when you can. Thanks.
Mayor, those were all our speakers.
Moving on to consent agenda, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Rene Rodriguez,
Aye.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes.
Victor Perez is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes. Item number 9, public hearing of an ordinance for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block 1, Grijalva Gardens, Lot 4, located at 733 Grijalva Drive, from R1 Single Family Residential to R2 Medium Density Residential for a duplex. 6:12, public hearing is now open.
My name is Sergio Cox, former alderman here at Socorro. In this ordinance proposal, I wholeheartedly agree with this, and I'm going to tell you why I agree with it. Moon City is Grijalva is in Moon City, which is District 1, and there are several vacant lots in Moon City. In the old days, when I was young, a kid, we used to have to go from Burt all the way to North Loop, Moon City, to go to the store, just to go to the store. There was, the Moon City was known as Tornado Town because it just wasn't taken care of. So that's an old name. What we have in Moon City right now is a lot of empty lots that are been handed down from generation to generation. And these lots need to be made available to the people that inherit these lots or buy these lots so that they can go in there and put in residential or double wide mobile homes or whatever, so that tax base would be increased. So I'm in agreement with the changing of resident 1 to resident 2, R1 to R2. I think it would benefit the city of Socorro. It would benefit Moon City for sure. Increase the tax base. Allow the new generation who's having a hard time with this new era that we're in to help themselves one way or another. Last meeting I was here, you guys talked about spot zoning. And you utilize spot zoning to keep somebody from going from R1 to R2, which was inappropriate. And I don't see why we would try to use spot zoning to keep anybody else from trying to build something in these little lots that are available. So I strongly recommend that you look at it that way, and hopefully maybe we can get more people taking care of their lots. Because otherwise you have empty lots that are growing weeds that are a burden to the city, our code enforcers and so forth. So I'm just letting you know I'm in favor of what you guys are trying to do here with this. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sandy Saucedo. I don't live in Grijalva. but I live in Socorro. And there is 2 empty lots in my area, one in the left and one in the right. And I don't think that's right to change it to R1 and R2. If there's people already that have bought that, the land, and they know that it's an R1, why should it be changed? If they know that there's a lot of houses around there and no duplexes. So I don't think that's right. And I would fight for it. Not changing it from R2 to R1. Because my house is in the middle and I have 2 empty lots. And I don't want a duplex there. Thank you very much.
(6:15) Public hearing is now closed. Item number 10, second reading and adoption of an ordinance for the proposed amendment to the City of Socorro's master plan and rezoning of Block 1, Grijalva Gardens, Lot 4, located at 733 Grijalva Drive from R1, single-family residential, to R2, medium-density residential for a duplex. Mr. Rodriguez?
At this time, I would make a motion to go ahead and deny the rezoning. Our staff and our board also recommend denial.
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Mayor, one of the things is that we can't pick and choose whenever we feel like spot zoning is correct. I understand that, in the past, some members of council have said, oh no, spot zoning is not right and this and that, and we can't do that, but yet, we can come up here and say that we want to, and it's okay. It's not to bend our ordinances just because when we feel like it. If it's there for a reason, we should uphold it and continue doing that.
Ms. Villalobos?
Mr. Martinez, would you please, for educational purpose of everybody that's here, spot zoning, what it entails?
Spot zoning is simply a use that's inconsistent with the land, with the uses of the surrounding property.
Okay.
Right, and usually, Mike Bennett, city planner, and just to add, usually these zoning requirements are a functionality of a land use map that are tied to a comprehensive plan that comes before this body for approval. So essentially is that there's land uses that are approved at a function of time, and as you move through time, somebody may elect to try to change what is authorized to be utilized in that said property. So it kind of goes against the cohesiveness of the neighborhood or of the area.
And I'm sorry, one more question. And our ordinance right now as it stands regarding regarding from an R1 to an R2 in this particular situation, clearly states that this is non-conforming spot zoning or something like that?
Well, I don't know so much that it's an ordinance that has a functionality of the definition of spot zoning. It's a practice of identifying a potential use that does not conform to the existing use. So here is that the planning department made a recommendation based on the information available through the land use map and the zoning requirements. The commissioners were presented that same material, and that's the same information that you all are receiving.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is what, besides what you're stating now, besides this body prevents them from going up further to getting their accomplishment, being the petitioner?
So from a due process perspective is that, of course, they go through the Planning and Zoning Commission, they go before this body for an action. So whether it's approved or denied, if it's denied, then they have to wait a year to come back and ask for the same set of condition. There's another route that they could have gone through the Board of Adjustments and asked for a variance. The same principle applies there, and actually it's a little bit more restrictive they have to demonstrate the burden of proof of why they need the use. Simply just saying that we want to go from R1 to R2 as a functionality of making more money is not merit for granting such use.
Okay, thank you, I'm satisfied.
Rene Rodriguez,
Aye.
Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes.
Victor Perez is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Mayor, at this time, I would like to entertain and make a motion to move items in this order: 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, and 24.
Next,
Next.
do we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry. Second.
Yo. Rene Rodriguez,
Aye.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes.
Victor Perez is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Can you repeat the order, Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes, the order in which we will take these is 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, and then 24.
Moving on to item number 20, discussion and action to request to the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization to add Rio Vista as a 4-lane project for inclusion on the transportation planning documents and travel demand model. Also request assistance from Socorro Independent School District and the El Paso County Water Irrigation District Number 1 on the widening of Rio Vista from Alameda to North Loop, as well as to expand the bridge next to Sanchez Elementary.
This motion, I would like to make the motion to approve, to request the MPO, for short, Metropolitan Planning Organization, to put Rio Vista, to include a 4-way lane all the way from Alameda, all the way to Stockyard, correct? Stockyard? Thunder. And to also put the bridge. The reason why, can I have a motion?
Second.
Okay. Oh,
Mr. Rodriguez?
okay. I was talking to the director of the MPO, and we were having a discussion of all of the future planning. For people who don't understand what the Metropolitan organization is that it's every municipality in the county of El Paso, which extends all the way from Anthony all the way to Sierra Blanca, basically Hudspeth County. So every municipality in this area, which is Clint, Horizon, San Elizario, El Paso, everybody, every city has a seat at the table, which the federal government gives money. And that's why it's very important that if you know anybody that when the census comes, it's very important to tell them to take the census, because that's where the funding comes from. So depending on the population that we're in, then there's money for it. And in this particular MPO, that's where the funding is. Socorro only has a $9.5 million budget, okay? So just to give you an example, Old Waco Tanks was it's $10 million project. When I got here, we didn't have it in the budget because, like I said, we're only at $9.5 million. So you can't put 100% of your budget to do one project. So the MPO comes in, we have to, help them with either engineering or help acquire right away, or give a 20% match of the whole amount. So this is very important because the time is now. There is a Destino 2045 plan that has been in the works for, I think, the last 3-4 years or so. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike.
So as it stands right now, the MPO has a functioning transportation plan called Destino. In speaking with the director of the MPO, he made us aware that there's a possibility of making amendments to the plan. So it is critical for us to nominate projects so that they're a part of the plan, but more importantly, they go through what's called the transportation conformity component, where they meet all the air quality requirements.
So in closing, The opportunity is now to put it into the plan. It doesn't mean that it's gonna be done next year. It means that we wanna put it into the plan, and when it says Destino 2045, that means that all of the projects that every municipality has for the next year to 2045 is in that plan. If our projects are not in that plan, these projects will not be considered until 2046. So those are so far away that even if we're able to somehow next year or 2 years or 5 years down the line, we're gonna miss out on the opportunity to be able to get funding, federal funding, to build these roads. For example, Old Waco tanks, it goes back to the same thing. We had to acquire land, which cost $1.5 million. We did it with less than that. So it only cost the city $640,000 instead of $1.5 million, which we saved almost $1 million. So those are the opportunities we have. And the reason why I'm bringing these up is because the opportunity is now. Because the city is growing, there's a lot of subdivisions coming up, and our streets cannot handle the vehicles that are existing in our roads today. So it's very important, very vital that we take steps to say if there's an opportunity to try to program these into that 2045 Destino plan.
The only thing we need to add to the motion, I'm sorry, Mayor, is it doesn't include the Thunder to North Loop.
Oh.
So you just have to make it part of the motion in order, if you're
Yes.
gonna move forward
So I'll
with it.
make I'll amend my motion to include the part from Thunder to North Loop,
To North Loop.
as well.
Do you have a sec? Ms. Villalobos?
Mr. Medina, this is awesome that we're able to, whiten our streets or look for the future, but my concern is that the first half of Socorro is getting all this expansion or is in the expansion, but the last part takes us forever to get on the freeway. We don't have easy access. This won't, my question is, this won't hurt any maybe potential projects? Because we're doing these projects first versus the projects that really need it, which are these projects are awesome, but the backside is even more congested and no access. There was just an accident a couple of weeks ago, and I needed a unit, and they had to go around to get to me, so. Because there was an accident right on North Loop preventing.
Yes, just to answer your question,
Mr. Rodriguez?
it's not going to affect, thank you, Mayor. It's not going to affect any projects like the Tigua Boulevard that we already programmed. The thing is that in the plan right now, if we don't submit any projects that we're able to do in future projects, then it's not gonna happen. Even if we're able to fund a project and ask for federal aid, it's not going to happen, and we're gonna have to wait till 2046 to try to put it in another plan. So it's important. The project that we have, for example, Tigua Boulevard, that should extend from I-10 all the way down to Alameda, Socorro, and to the extension of
Border Highway East.
Border Highway East, that is still in the plan. So
But
those
where does
won't be
that start?
affected.
Where does that
Those
start?
won't be affected.
Mhm.
It's programmed.
Where does it go through?
We don't know. If you remember, 2 meetings ago, we allocated funding to start with the engineering.
Right.
So it's still in the engineering phase, that's what it is. And these projects that I'm bringing up will not affect that.
Okay.
They're still programmed, they're already into that plan. Nothing's gonna be taken out of that. The reason why is because it's vital that we do this now, because potentially they're going to be able to submit new plans. Because some projects, for example, we got notified in the MPO that one of the projects got stalled. Nothing to do with except a third party. So those are the things that they're issuing, that they're gonna take another look at it and try to see if we can program these. So that's, nothing's gonna be affected.
Thank you.
Aye. Yes.
You have, there is a speaker.
Thank you. Miriam Cruz. The reason I had signed up originally was because of the expansion that I was hoping that it would go all the way to Thunder, which I appreciate that that's being included. But also, I wanted to ask, since probably a few months ago, actually, that you guys had talked about having a more thorough presentation of items. I was wondering if Mr. Rodriguez had an estimate for the financial impact that this should have on the city in the future. I know that it's only adding it to the plan. It's very theoretical and very probably out in the future. But I was wondering if there was any sort of estimate or any sort of idea that he or anyone else can provide as to what kind of financial impact this would have on the city of Socorro. Thank you.
So members, we do have cost estimates, and these are planning dollars. So for the Rio Vista portion from Alameda to North Loop is estimated at $12 million. The portion that would abut North Loop all the way up to the Stockyard area is an additional $12 million. One of the things that has to be emphasized here is that we have a lot of utility relocation. This also includes irrigation, infrastructure, and ditches. So part of that is that we would have to find a way to either move the utilities as a functionality of an environmental document that would also include the cooperative effort with the irrigation district and others.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Mr. Duran?
Mayor, at this time, could we move up item number 12, because the gentleman from the ambulance service is here, and I don't think he wants to listen to everything, plus our grant writer's back there just chomping at the bit to get this up here.
Well, you should have said something when I did that, because I'm in a time crunch.
That's why I'm saying it now.
You can wait.
Do you have a second?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Item number 12, discussion and action to award the emergency medical care ambulance services contract to Elite Medical Transport of Texas LLC and negotiate subsidy costs for fiscal year 2019-2020 in the amount of $110,000 up to $140,000.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Alejandra Valadez, Grants Coordinator. I am not an ambulance or EMS expert, but I have assisted City Manager in a lot of the research that surrounds this RFP and this presentation today. There are a lot of slides, and for time efficiency, I will cover them briefly, but please, if you have any questions on any slide that I went too quickly through, please let me know. So briefly, we'll talk about the RFP background, ambulance services in Texas, the levels of care and what they mean. What are some EMS performance indicators, costs and subsidies that we've seen in other cities in Texas? What current services we provide, some of the responses that we received in the form of proposals, and then we'll compare options 1 and options 2. So on April 24th, 2019, City Council directed staff to proceed with an RFP for ambulance services. We opened bids on May 31st, 2019. We received 3 responses. Only one of those responses met the requirements of the RFP, and that was Elite Medical Transport. We also reviewed information and data from other sources in order to compare some of these choices. So to start off, ambulance services in Texas are not an essential service. However, most municipalities understand the importance of providing these services, and they do so through a number of models. Nonetheless, all EMS providers must be licensed by the Texas Department of State Health Services. According to the Texas Administrative Code, there are several level of care designations starting from the basic life support level, which is the most basic service or medical service that can be provided by an ambulance unit, all the way up to mobile intensive care unit and air medical and specialized transport units. The level of care really depends on the personnel that is available, that is in the ambulance, what type of training they have, what type of equipment, and what pharmaceuticals they carry on the unit as well. So for example, for basic life support, the minimum requirement is 2 emergency care attendants. Each of those ECAs needs to have at least 60 hours of training, and they can perform some basic functions like vital signs, CPR, stop bleeding, bandaging, splinting, all of that. And then it moves up to ALS, where you have to have an EMT intermediate with 150 to 250 hours of training, and they can administer drugs at that point and administer medication intravenously. And then up to the highest level that I think we would be interested here in Socorro, which is the mobile intensive care unit. That requires the presence of at least 1 paramedic, and that paramedic should have at least 1,000 hours of training, and they can provide all of the basic level of care all the way up to advanced life support, and then the mobile intensive care also. We also looked at what are some performance indicators that we can use to assess the quality of the EMS services that are provided, and then we chose some of those. We chose the level of care, the transport vehicles that are available, the fleet condition, response times, average cost per call for service, and then also a commitment to cost neutrality, and we'll talk about these metrics today. We also looked at other types of EMS systems in Texas to see where we would fall. There's a public utility model, there's a fire-based model where the fire department provides the EMS services. There's a third service model where, kind of like what we have set up here with Socorro and the county, 2 jurisdictions come together and they sign an interlocal agreement. And then there's a franchise model, and that is a little bit, it's probably one of the cheapest models that are out there. We compared some of the costs and subsidies for the various EMS systems, and we looked at 5 cities across Texas to compare the costs. And I've highlighted them here for you. The cost per call, if you look at Fort Worth, San Antonio, Dallas, Austin, Arlington, and then you compare that to El Paso County, which is provided through Life Ambulances, the $484 cost per call is comparable to the rest of the other cities. And some of the costs that were quoted by Elite through our RFP are also in that same range, so they're consistent. The subsidy per capita on the bottom is also comparable to the rest of the cities that we looked at. And then there were some other metrics that we weren't able to verify because we didn't have the information available for Life Ambulances.
So I'm gonna stop you there, right there.
Mr. Rodriguez?
I just have a question. Why are we looking at Fort Worth, San Antonio, Dallas, and Austin, Arlington, bigger cities than Socorro? You know, when we compare, of course, there are higher numbers. So my whole question is why do you guys, and this is for ours, is continue to look at bigger, huge cities other than what smaller municipalities have?
So there's 2 points to that. Number 1, bigger municipalities have more power, demanding power, and so they are able to impose a lot more regulations on the EMS providers. The EMS providers for Fort Worth, for example, was MedStar, and they're required to report to the Fort Worth. They have a regional authority, EMS authority, and so they demand that type of data and metrics. Smaller municipalities like Socorro typically fall under services through their counties. And so a lot of the times, these smaller municipalities do not have the bargaining power to demand a lot of the data that we need in order to have these comparisons. However, I would like to point out that the data that you see is normalized, and the way that we can correct for the population difference is by looking at the subsidy per capita. That means that regardless of how large the population is, if you do the calculation, you can calculate how much you're paying per person that you're providing services to. So for example, Fort Worth pays $4.30 per person that they provide EMS services for. El Paso County, if we go with El Paso County through Life, we would pay $3.08 per person that lives in Socorro, and that is receiving subsidy, EMS services through Life. So that's the way that we can look at large population centers and normalize the data so that we can compare apples to apples.
So once again, you did not look at small municipalities.
Because the information is not there, sir.
Well, we could have at least got information on that and say what small cities you looked at, and you could have brought that to us.
Mr. Rodriguez, the El Paso County couldn't even provide us that information
Okay,
at this time.
that's not my question. My question is, you should have gone to smaller municipalities, and if there was no response, put it in this nice slide and give it to us, so we can know that you guys went to the same amount of municipality size and say, we don't have no data, and therefore, we went with the bigger cities. That's what I'm asking. I'm not asking for excuses, and I like it. I'm just saying is, I just wanted figures with the same amount of population of Socorro. Because Fort Worth isn't the same population, especially San Antonio, and much worse is Dallas.
Correct, and
So-
smaller municipalities do go through counties.
Well,
Which is the
I
same
would have
situation.
liked, once again, that next time that we go and do an RFP or an RFQ or whatever, bring us the same information with the smaller municipalities as well.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Villalobos?
I tend to agree with Mr. Rodriguez, because when I was looking at these charts, I noticed, I know Dallas is a lot bigger, and the other cities are a lot bigger, so of course, they have a lot more patients, so they're gonna charge a lot less than here.
Right,
It's
right.
normal, because when you look at it, look at how much more we're paying. Even if we're paying, $30 more, it's a lot for the city of Socorro. For, our regular constituents are earning $12 an hour, and a lot of them do not have insurance.
Absolutely, right.
So, regardless of his point, my point is that even $4.84 is too much
Absolutely, yeah.
for
And
Socorro.
we'll talk a little bit about some of the findings that they were able to recommend through that study that can apply to us as well. But in looking at the cost per call for these different systems, one of the lowest cost models is the franchise model. Nonetheless, our subsidy per capita on the bottom row, you'll see that is still within the range. It's relatively cheap. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable subsidy per person that gets EMS services currently with the county. The key takeaways for this study, the Polaris group that conducted and gathered all of this group for Fort Worth, we did recommend to eliminate the tax subsidy for MedStar, which was the EMS provider. Once they were able to look at all of the revenues that the EMS provider was getting in terms of gross billing through Medicaid and Medicare, they found out they were getting profits of over $2 million, and in addition, getting the tax subsidy from Fort Worth. So they recommended that really the city of Fort Worth didn't need to provide that subsidy anymore because there were enough revenues that were being collected. And of course, there's many advantages and disadvantages to the different types of EMS models and systems. And as you pointed out, geographical areas that are larger and that can collect larger call volumes are going to be able to reduce those costs. So we also looked at the current EMS services available in Socorro to see what we are going to get what we've been getting so far and what we're going to get if we go with the county. For the level of care, whether we're getting basic life support, advanced life care, or MICU, we could not verify. We couldn't verify how many ambulances are designated specifically for the city of Socorro. We couldn't verify the condition of the ambulances. We do know that the average response times have been between 8 to 10 minutes on average. And according to a 2013 audit, their cost per call for service is around $484. And again, we do not know the revenues exceeding costs that Life is collecting from the city of Socorro. We also looked at the quarterly reports that Life reports to the El Paso County Commissioners Courts from 2012 all the way to 2018 to see if we could calculate why they're charging us the new fee. And we did find that overall, the annual subsidy increased from a roughly 64,000 in 2014 all the way up to $107,390. As you can see, the cancellation rate also increased from about 11% all the way to 29%, almost 30%. The cancellation rate is when you call an ambulance, they show up to your door, and then you refuse to get the transport to the hospital. That's costly because EMS providers get reimbursed for the transport and not just for coming to your door. So in the overall, from 2012 to 2018, we did see a population growth of 4.3%. We saw a drop in the calls, the actual transports that were reported by Life, and we saw an increase of 224% in the number of refusals or cancellation calls. And overall, we saw that subsidy, the annual subsidy, that El Paso County was paying for Socorro did increase to 65%. We also compared the data that was provided by Life to the data that is provided by the 911 district to see if we can see the same numbers or the same trends. For 2018, you can see that there were 872 canceled calls that were reported by Life, and for the 911 district, that number is 399 canceled calls, so the difference is about a 15% in cancellation rate. We also mapped all of the calls that are received by the 911 district, and there are about a couple hundred calls that are coded as coming from the city of Socorro but are not actually located in the city of Socorro. And so that's something that we should maybe think about addressing in terms of the coding and look at that further. Of the 3 RFP responses that we received, as I mentioned, only Elite Medical Transport was fully responsive to the RFP instructions. Life Ambulance only submitted a letter advising us to stay with the county, and Dominion was not responsive to the RFP instructions. So for Elite Medical Transport, of the 5 choices that they gave us, we thought Scenario 1 and Scenario 4 were the most feasible and cost-effective. For Scenario 1, they would provide 1 basic life support ambulance with 2 EMT basics and 1 advanced life support ambulance with 1 EMT and 1 EMT intermediate. For Scenario 4, we would get also the BLS unit as well as a mobile intensive care unit. We would always have 2 response-ready ambulances in either choice. We would have Type 2 ambulances. The response time would be guaranteed to be under 10 minutes. The cost per call for service would be a little bit different between the 2, more expensive for the MICU, but overall, the subsidy per capita would be within the range. Elite also committed to cost neutrality and data transparency with this if they were awarded the contract. They agreed to further reduce costs by partnering with the city for fuel if we provide locations for the substations, and also to use our ambulance vehicles if we receive the funding to buy those ambulance vehicles. They also agreed to access to data and regular reporting so that we can come up with better solutions. So I'll briefly compare the 2 options so that you can get a good understanding of that. So for El Paso County, the proposal that the interlocal agreement that they proposed would phase us out over the course of 3 years, starting with $39,000 in 2019, and then increasing all the way up to $106,000 by fiscal year 2021. Again, based on the agreement, we do not know what level of services they would provide. We don't know how many ambulances. We don't know what the cost per call would be. But we do know that it's still at a very good, reasonable rate and subsidy per capita of $3.08. For Elite, after further discussing the proposed costs, they have agreed to have a base rate of about $110,000 with a 5% profit cap, and we would guardrail that at around $140,000. And the way that we work it, for 2019, we would have a base rate of $110,000. The year they would provide services, at the end of the year, we would do a financial audit and see what their revenues are. And depending on that, if they went above a 5% profit cap, that 5% increase over the profit cap would revert back into a city fund. And if they have a negative, more than a -1 loss, profit loss, we would then pay them for that further than -1 loss. Does that make sense, sort of?
So in other words, Mayor,
Mr. Rodriguez?
so what you're saying is that we're capped at $110,000, just to be clear. So it'll go up to possibly 140 if they're in a net loss
Yes.
throughout the year. But in the same token, if they do have an increase of gains of revenue for more than 5%, then we would get the difference.
Correct, right. So it's a little bit of a lot of unknown, but the city does, based on our calculations, we do believe that Elite can see profits by reducing operational costs, and that we believe that they would be profitable. One more time, their option, once we calculate that 110,000 base rate, we would get 2 AMT basics, at least 1 paramedic in the city, 2 guaranteed response-ready ambulance vehicles, type 2 ambulances, and then the subsidy per capita per person would be only $3.19. In comparison, these are your 2 options. The first column is for the metrics, the second column is for El Paso County, which is provided through Life. And then the third option is if Socorro contracts directly with Elite, if we award the contract to Elite. So as you can see, the level of services for the El Paso County would still be not contractually obligated. For us, we would have a contract agreement stating that they will provide a BLS and an MICU unit, 2 ambulance vehicles. The response time is guaranteed under 10 minutes. The cost per call for service is estimated at $261. And then at the bottom, that base rate would be $110,000 compared to the full subsidy after the 3 years with El Paso County of $106,000. So there are some advantages of going to the county, with the county. Firstly, we already know that they're gonna phase us out into the $106,000.
Alejandra, I kind of want to stop you there because they took that option off the table if we didn't go with them last year. They said that option, so this year it would be the whole 106,000 because we didn't approve the phase approach last year.
Understood.
And you all received a letter stating.
And this is the El Paso County.
Yes.
So please excuse that. For 2019, we would pay $106,000. However, that cost is already known. We will not have to pay extra if they go negative. It's a known cost. There's also some disadvantages. We won't have any contractual obligations for level of services, for the number of ambulances that are supposed to stay here in Socorro. We don't know what their revenues and profits are from serving Socorro residents, and then we won't be able to have a commitment to reduce that $106,000 down further. For Elite, some advantages are that the costs are reasonable. It would be comparable to the $106,000 that is being charged by the county. We are guaranteed a level of service and then the number of ambulances, and then we have the opportunity to reduce those costs further if we partner with them for fuel and substations. There are some disadvantages. The disadvantages are that there are many risks that we do not know. We do not know what we do not know. And there may be unexpected costs. They could see a profit loss, a loss. And then our cancellation rate may be higher or lower. And so those are unknowns that we also need to consider. And all of this information is provided with a small little caveat that there were a lot of issues in accessing this information. The data that you see here are mainly through El Paso County Commissioner report, quarterly reports to the El Paso County Commissioners, and through a 2013 audit. But other than that, there's very little data, as Mr. Rene mentioned and Ms. Rodarte mentioned, on small municipalities and their EMS services. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Duran?
With regards to Life Ambulance, they didn't supply us with any information
No, sir.
Were they given the opportunity to supply us? Because I remember one time they came in here, we had no information about the services, so they could put us with one ambulance? Is that correct?
Yes, so we did put out the RFP and we published it like for anybody else, and they supplied a two-page letter indicating that it would be more cost-effective if we stayed with the county. We also just struggled on getting some of the information from the county in terms of the revenues, the actual costs that they're incurring to serve Socorro residents. And so the most reliable data that we could find were the commissioner's quarterly reports and the 2013 data.
But you did give them the option to give us
Absolutely.
all that information so we could make a more
Absolutely.
informed decision.
It was requested numerous times.
Mr. Arte?
And I just kind of want to add that I think the city of Socorro right now is at a crosspaths. We continue paying, right, we haven't paid for ambulance services in, well, we've never paid for that service. So the county's coming to us asking us we should pay for our portion. But we can't verify any of the information, so we don't know where these $106,000 are gonna go to. Other than, okay, we're providing a service. Because all of the information was unverifiable. The agreement states, the agreement is very vague between the county and Life. Doesn't give them a lot of teeth. We've asked for financials. That information isn't available. All they come back is with non-responsive information. So there's not a lot of information that we can justify the $106,000. Now, with Elite, we would be able to gather information for 1 year and know exactly what we're providing our residents. What level of service, what the profit that the Elite makes out of the city of Socorro, and we would be able to control that the services are stayed here in the city. As she stated, is the 911 district reported, and they report addresses. There was a couple hundred calls that did not service citizens of Socorro, but were being charged for. Okay, so I think that, you know, we've done the lead work, and it just seems that if we want to collect raw data, we should consider going with Elite. If we want to continue not knowing what we're paying for, then, but it is more cost effective for the city, then we could stay with the county.
Mr. Duran?
But the county is gonna charge us that over $100,000.
Yes.
It's no longer gonna be the graduated.
No, we received a letter a couple of months ago stating that that phased approach was taken off the table because we didn't agree to it last year. So this year we would have to pay for the whole amount of 106.
Regardless, yeah.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, and I want to remind the council members as well that we had elections since then. So we have a new appointees in the commissioners court. So just letting you know. Do we have any speakers? Oh.
Mr. Rodriguez?
At this time, I would like to make a motion to
I have a
postpone
question. I'm
to
sorry.
the following.
One question.
Ms. Villalobos?
I'm sorry. So if we award any of these companies, we're awarding them for 4 years?
No, I think that still would be negotiable.
Is it an open contract?
No, I think it would be a 12-month contract, and that's what we agreed on, and only because we don't have information. So it's a risk for Elite to come in and say, I want to award it for 3 years, not knowing what it is coming into. We're on the same boat, right? We don't know exactly because we're not receiving information that we would be able to give a correct answer and say, yes, this is what we're going to pay. So it would be 12 months and then an option to renew or an option to go out for an RFP again. Or go back and say to the county, we want to continue with your services.
I have a comment. It's just unbelievable that we have two companies that you have the same patient, but depending on which company you have different services for each and how they treat the patient. I wonder if that makes a difference, whether it's a life or death situation, because of their training, et cetera, and that's what we should be focused on right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you know, if we ever needed an ambulance, a life situation, you know, you would want the absolute best for here in your city.
Right. So that's where the level of care designations come in. The basic life support is limited in the level of care, medical care that they can provide. For example, I don't believe that they are able to provide medications. They can't break skin to provide medications. I don't believe that they're required to have a cardiac defibrillator or cardiac monitor on the unit. I'm sorry?
Who's they? I'm sorry. Who's they?
If a BLS unit, a basic life support unit,
Okay.
that would be a cardiac defibrillator and cardiac monitor would be available at a higher level of care designation. And so we don't know, right now we don't know what type of training, if you call 911, what type of training the EMTs have, what type of equipment they have. They may be doing a really good job. We have not heard complaints. I'm not here to say anything bad about the services we're getting, but we just don't know.
Well, how would they complain if they didn't know? We think they all operate the same way. I'm
Right.
just now, because of this report,
is our
I'm finding
responsibility.
out that they don't.
Mr. Arte?
I went blank, I'm sorry.
No, I just think it's important that we try to get the best
Yes.
for our city. We, you know. I'm sorry.
Mr. Arte?
I also wanted to add that the county hasn't gone out for bid, and they're not required to, for this services over 30 years. So Life Ambulance has worked for them for over 30 years without any, sometimes competition is good, allowing someone, right, because then you become more competitive in the service and the level of services that you provide to your patients.
Mr. Duran?
And also, as I read the motion, it is to negotiate the subsidy cost. So we really don't know exactly how much it's gonna be.
Okay, so we've sat down with Elite, and that's why we were coming back to council, because we're still negotiating. So the base would be 110, but we were telling him we wouldn't pay more than 140 based on the end of the year, right? But we might be paying less because we don't know if they are making money.
So in other words,
Right?
this is just so
They
you
might
can.
be making money, and then we wouldn't have to pay anything. But we don't know that because we don't have that information in front of us.
Yeah.
Mr. Rodriguez?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone to the following meeting. I just want to do some research myself.
I second.
Postpone for the next meeting.
Aye.
Yes.
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 I repeat, for the next meeting.
Item number 21, discussion and action to request Texas Department of Transportation to widen North Loop Road, FM 76 from Horizon Boulevard in Socorro, Texas, to the El Paso County, Hudspeth County line. Mr. Rodriguez?
At this time, I would like to make a motion to approve, to request the Texas Department of Transportation to widen North Loop Road, FM 76 from Horizon Boulevard in Socorro, Texas, to El Paso County / Hudspeth County line.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez?
The reason, once again, this item is here because there's a possibility of trying to put this is not our street. Okay, the reason why I'm saying is that we already talked to the mayors of San Elizario, Clint, we talked to a member of the Tiguas, we talked to a member of the Commissioners Court, I talked to somebody in TxDOT, and they're willing to give us a letter of support if we pass this, because we need to widen North Loop. To touch on your concern that there's nothing happening, yes, there is. It's just that if we don't put it in, it ain't gonna happen till 2046. I just wanna let everybody know that on District 1 and 4, which is between The thing that divides it on our east side of the city is North Loop. So north of North Loop is District 1, and south of North Loop is District 4. And there's a lot of growth. We're already having some agricultural land that's being sold, and there's a lot of development, and we gotta catch that. So all this is to go and say that us, the city of Socorro, because that street is needs to be widened because it's affecting us. So we want TxDOT to say, hey, so they can bring it into the metropolitan area, and already have a consensus with our neighborhood cities that say that this is a great move. So all we need is, if the board, decides to agree with me, is we send a letter to TxDOT and let them know that we want them to go ahead and present this to the MPO and to the Destino Plan 2045.
Ms. Mayor.
Ms. Villalobos?
And just to add to that, every time there's an accident, we have to go around. It's happened so many times, and it takes us an additional 45 minutes, something that should have taken us 5 minutes. We have to go around and find irrigation canals to go through to get to our properties. And more now, they're starting to block those irrigation ditches, so sometimes we even have to go, make a little turn into a dirt road that is private, just so we could get to our property. So I wholeheartedly believe that this is the right way to go. Thank you.
Miriam Cruz?
I am wondering why why you guys would be setting a motion to extend it all the way to the Hudspeth County line. I think it would make sense for us to be proposing that they widen it up until the city of Socorro. I don't see how you guys can ask TxDOT to extend it beyond our city limits. I think it should. Obviously, it would make sense that it does. But I think that's when you come together with all the municipalities that Mr. Rodriguez mentioned to bring it together. I'm just wondering why we would vote on something that's beyond our county lines. Thanks.
Thank you.
So the purpose of us asking the neighboring agencies is that, remember, the MPO is a regional transportation planning agency. And so what we do is that we do, from that perspective, inclusive transportation projects. So it is a benefit of all the neighboring municipalities all the way up to the Hudspeth County line for us to have that accessibility and mobility. Now, whether TxDOT can come and do the entire thing, that's why we need to ask the MPO. They may come back and say they may phase the project like they've done over several years. And so phase 7 is the one that you just finished. And I remember when I started working at the MPO over 13 years ago, that was just programmed at that time. So it does take time for projects to be funded, to be programmed, and then to be delivered. So it is the due diligence of this body to include the neighboring agencies to go to the MPO and ask for these type of things.
Rene Rodriguez?
Aye.
Cesar Nevares?
Yes.
Ralph Duran?
Yes.
Victor Perez is absent, and Ivan Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 22, discussion and action to approve the repair and expansion of the Rio Vista Bridge next to Sanchez Middle School in the amount of $500,000.
Make a motion to approve the expansion of the Rio Vista Bridge next to Sanchez Middle School for the amount of $500,000.
Second.
Mr. Rodriguez?
The reason why I brought this up is because we were talking about expansions of Rio Vista, right? So my concern is that I take my children, my little one, and I have to pass Rio Vista to get to District 4. So my son goes to the elementary, but every time I go there, it's concerning because there's been accidents and the rails on the bridge are always being knocked down. Furthermore, there was a car that went into that canal, and there was kind of few accidents because it's too narrow. And we're talking about our children, Buses go through there, and I saw in the morning that a bus was trying, and somebody, I think, or I'm making an assumption here, that was late for work and just went in front of the bus. So because it is our children's safety, and of course our residents' safety, it is a safety issue. I feel that I need to bring it up so that we can widen it already. And it'll also help us to boost the project of widening Rio Vista in the future, because it will already be, and the amount that it would cost to build this bridge now versus 5, 6, 8 years from now is very substantial. So even if you put a 3%, usually the MPO puts a 4%, correct? Like
Yes,
a
sir.
4% yearly on the cost. I mean, it's very substantial, the amount of money that we do it ourselves now. And it'll help our project as well. So,
I guess if I may, part of the bridge expansion is that we would widen the roadway from 2 to 4 to have that capacity in this section only.
Miriam Cruz.
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. In this section, meaning the canal only, or the entirety of what's in front of Sanchez is my first question. Second, the agenda item backup says 500. Is it 500,000 or 500? Third question is the 500,000. Is that like in-house that you're getting? Oh, I know that the motion says 500,000. I'm saying the backup, Mr. Nevares, sorry, says 500.
I'm not questioning what you said.
Okay, I'm just telling you because you're shaking your head.
It was
And
mentioned 500,000.
but it's also listed at 500.
In the
Thank you.
backup?
Yes. And my last question was, is this something that is getting built by the city, or is it something that we're going out for bid? Where is the estimate of 500,000 coming from? Is that something Mr. Medina came up with, or our department, or where? Thanks.
So in terms of the footprint, we would need to hire an engineer for the design. There would be some landing for the approaches, and then certainly the bridge would be pre-manufactured. We're always looking for opportunities with TxDOT. There is one that exists for us to move forward, but in the event and in the spirit of moving the city forward is that if the city had to fund this, we would come through the capital improvement program to fund this.
Rene Rodriguez.
aye.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes.
Victor Pérez is absent, and Iván Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 23, discussion and action to request to the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization to amend the Destino 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Travel Demand Model to include the Nuevo Hueco Tanks roadway extension from North Loop, FM 76 to Alameda Avenue, SH 20 in the appropriate network year for acceleration.
Make a motion to approve to request the MPO, which is the El Paso Metropolitan Planning Organization, to amend the Destino 2045 to to extend the Nuevo Hueco Tanks roadway extension from North Loop all the way to Alameda. The reason why is because in the past year and a half, we've been working with the developers and acquiring right-of-way on the corner of Nevares and Alameda. So we already trying to get that right away. We already did, but we need to program this into the Destino plan, because if we don't, then we're not going to be able to get funding to build this road. So it's very important. Like I said, the time is now to try to program him, because these roads are very significant. They exceed our budget, our annual budget, so we can't do it ourselves, so we need federal funding. So that's why it's very important to bring it up and try to, the opportunity is now to put it into the Destino plan.
Second.
Rene Rodriguez.
Aye.
Cesar Nevares.
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes.
Victor Pérez is absent, and Iván Colom Villalobos.
Yes.
Item number 25, discussion and action on charter amendments for the 2020 general election. Mr. Rodriguez?
Can I move up, no, that's okay, that's okay.
We're on number 25, the charter amendments. Pues I guess.
May I speak? May I speak?
Ms. Eloas?
Okay. I did do some homework. I did research. I like to say that these are solely my words, but they are not. I did look at other home rules and kind of compiled something together. It's just something to get us started. It's not perfect, can be tweaked. I did work on some of the layout, but not the font. The font can change. And I just wanted to share it with all of you. And one of the things that I wanted to do is give you some definitions of some of the stuff that our charter has and why it's there. Because I didn't see it on any other, which is the Acta Constitua, Constitutiva in Spanish. And I really didn't know what it meant, so I put some meanings there for you that I found of what it means. Now it makes total sense to me of why it's there, but I don't know if it's something that we'd like to keep.
You know what, I like it, I'm gonna look at it. I need to step out. But if you guys wanna postpone the item so we can look at what you posted, that'd be great. If not, if you guys wanna go ahead and tackle this, it's great as well. I just have to step out. I would wanna be for this, but, you know, I can't.
How about we make real quick, we make a motion to postpone approving anything, but continue with the other three, which would be 6. Does that make sense, so we don't lose any time?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it's whatever you wish.
Okay.
It's just workshops.
Can we have a discussion and then keep like a rolling list and then we want to
Yes.
approve anything till the end?
Yeah, and then I'll look at your stuff, and
Okay.
if I have any questions,
Sounds
I'll
good.
give you a call.
Alrighty.
I'll give you a call because you obviously did your homework. Because I just chicken scratched mine, you know. But I mean, I like that you actually printed it out and stuff. And it
Well,
showed that.
Thank you, Ms. Lemon. Okay,
Say,
sounds good.
thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. So my motion is to postpone to the following meeting, correct?
We can go over anything that we worked on and then
Okay.
we'll include in the backup for the next meeting. We're not approving anything today, it's just
Today.
a workshop.
Okay.
That way we can already like kind of work on some things. Mr. Duran?
Uh,
There's gonna be discussion.
Okay. I think on Article 2, Section 3, I think this one we need to leave up to Jim to clean it up, to add all of the 4-year terms to, right here,
Page 5?
page 5.
Oh, yeah.
We were supposed to go on that. Weren't we doing,
We're doing Article 1, 2, and 3.
right,
Page 1 through 15.
okay.
And I didn't find anything in Article 2 or Article 1. They're all kind of just definitions. But in Article 2, I think we can, let Jim handle this one as far as putting all of the 4-year terms into it correctly.
You're talking about 3.01?
Yeah, 3.01.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to do that and reconcile that with the ordinance the city passed and also the
State law.
court case.
Yeah.
Deciding what part of that was effective, what part wasn't. Yes, sir.
Okay. Also on section 3.02, paragraph B, it said candidates have resided for at least 12 months preceding the election within the corporate limits of the city or for 12 months within the territory which has been annexed by the city. I think we need to add that in our district, we need to be at least 12 months in our district. Does anybody have any problem with that?
Paragraph B.
Paragraph B. Yeah. I think that we need to add that language
Clause
that,
language.
because then somebody can move and still run in their, yeah. This way, if we add it, also have resided, and Jim, you can do that language too.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure if there's,
Texas. Uh-huh.
limits the ability to do that, but I will find out.
Okay.
That was my question. So, basically what you need is, what would you like to see here is that the person that actually runs should be in our,
In their district.
in their district for 12 months at
Mhm.
least before running, not
Live in there 12 months, then can run.
within,
Before running.
It doesn't contradict, we're just adding that language to the,
Because
To
in
the
other
item.
words, right now, they can live in District 4 for 12 months, and then they just move to District 3 for 1
run.
month, and then they can run.
because that language isn't in there, and we need to add that
I
language.
see. Okay, so it's, I was thinking moving to Socorro into their district,
No, no.
not within districts.
Right, and that's
Mhm.
what I was thinking.
And another item, section 3.04, general powers and duties. Paragraph O. I think we need to just eliminate that. I think that's for good cause, order a recall election to be held for and with respect to any member of city council. The people of Socorro elected us, they should be the only ones to remove us. And that language, for good cause, is kind of vague. I mean, we can all, 3 of us decide, we don't want, Victor anymore. Well, let's vote and have a recall election. He didn't show up to today's meeting, so that's, I think we just need to eliminate that. I think it is already addressed in section 3.02, paragraph D, as far as the qualifications. If they fail to meet, in other words, if they're convicted of a felony, we can remove them. It's already in there because they fail to maintain the qualifications to be a candidate. So I think if we remove that, we can put the power of recall back to the citizens. And we'll get to recall later. And with regard to section 3.06, vacancies, I think we can save the city a lot of money if, say, one of us were to pass away, resign, move away, whatever. As it stands now, we would have to have an election within a certain amount of days. That's $26,000. The county, I believe, has where they can, the council, us, we could appoint somebody for that position. But that person would not be able to run for that position in the next election. Reason being is an incumbent always has the upper hand, and this way they would serve until the term ended, and then we'd have a new election. Can we do that, Jim? The county does it. They, like with the county judge with vote, they brought him in.
Appoint an
They
interim.
appoint an interim until we can have an election at the regular election time.
And I believe you can, but again, that's an election code issue. I will check. You've seen in other areas of law, there's an entire list of regulatory acts, the state legislation that regulates municipalities, and then a separate section that regulates all the counties. And I think I can't immediately think of one that prohibits it, but let me look at the election code.
But I think that will save our city money in the long run, and I think it would also make for continuity. Somebody, resigns or moves or whatever, and the next meeting we can appoint somebody, and then we continue on rather than wait for an election and have to pay that $26,000.
Ms. Villalobos?
And I'm sorry, that appointee has to be a resident of Socorro?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Within the district?
Within the, if we change that, then he will have to live in the district that he will be representing, unless it's at large, which they can live anywhere. But I think that would save us money and move our city along quicker.
True.
Because it would have to be through council that they are approved. And then they can't run for that position when the time comes. I'm on a roll, okay? Leave me alone. Yeah, she drank it all my milk.
Mr. Martinez, on page 5, section 3.01, we're already fixing paragraph B to reflect the 4-year terms, but can we also reconcile paragraph C, the staggering?
Okay, one more time. What paragraph? It's page 5?
Page 5, 3.01, paragraph C.
And you would want to reconcile it with?
The staggering terms, because now we have the 4-year terms.
I think already the whole 3 point, okay, thank you.
B and C.
Mayor, can I ask Mr. Duran, for the vacancy issue, was your proposal that the vacancy be filled for
By
the
appointment.
duration of the existing
Term.
term or until a special election is called?
No, until the term is over.
Got it. Yes, sir.
That way, we save the money we say, yeah, it's till the next election. If there's 2 years left on his term, then he would serve those 2 years.
The same ones that you have, like.
You copy.
I was ahead of you. Do you have anything else, Ms. Villalobos?
No, ma'am. No.
Mr. Nevares?
He's getting water.
Do you have anything else? No. Can we postpone, I guess, review Articles 1 through 3 at the next meeting again, and then move on to Article 4 and 5? That way we can see what everybody else has and then still have a new little section to review.
Second.
I can't make a motion.
You have made a motion to postpone for the next meeting. We just need a second.
You have to make the motion.
Okay.
So we have, Ms. Colombia Villalobos made a motion to postpone for the next meeting, sections 1, 2, 3.
And review 4 and
You're
5.
gonna say?
Ralph Duran?
And
Uh,
add
Okay, I was just gonna say and add,
plus.
4,
plus
5, and 6. 4 and 5, or?
4 and 5, porque si no.
Okay, okay, okay.
4, 5, and 6?
I mean,
Or you
if
can
we
do
get
it
to it,
one.
we get to it. If we don't, we don't, and,
Okay.
you know.
4 to 6.
4
Yeah.
to 6.
4, 5, and 6 or
4, 5, and 6. No, it's her motion. I'm just gonna second it.
Have this big conference. So I'm just like, I don't know if I can get to it, but yeah. Okay.
The 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Second.
And we have a speaker, Sergio Cox.
I have some questions on this, and I hope that you guys can answer it for the public's sake. You're supposed to formulate a committee, not yourselves, but a committee, to go over these proposed amendments and proposed things that you want to withdraw from here also. If the issue is that you don't have people qualified, or because you can't get them together, then I guess maybe it does fall back on you guys, I don't know. But I'd like to know what all you guys are proposing. You're talking sections at a time, and you've got a whole chapter of city charter rules. Mr. Martinez brought up a good point just now with Mr. Duran's question about it has to go through the election code. You need to see what the state allows and will not allow. So that was good, that exchange happened. Because you can't just on yourself, just unilaterally decide that we're gonna change this because we want to. And I understand that it's gonna go to the public, and the public's gonna have the ultimate final say on this, because it's gonna be a vote on it. But I would like to know what all you guys are proposing. I'm just hearing a couple of things from Mr. Duran, but I think there's other issues in here that also need to be addressed, okay? And brought out. And if you're starting from right now, you need to bring it all out. Everything that you have in mind to change, bring it out so that we can tell you whether or not we agree with it or not as the public, because we are the ones that are ultimately gonna vote yea or nay. So you need to spell it all out if you can. Everything that you propose changing, from salaries to whatever you guys are making now, if you want to change that, or if you want to change vacation, or if you want to change whatever, insurance, whatever, that all needs to come out now, not later, as quickly as possible, because it has to be ready for the election. Is that right? Am I not mistaken?
Mr. Cox, your time is up.
Okay.
Mr. Duran?
I think I can answer the question. We've been trying to form a charter commission, which nobody wanted to be a part of. We're going to, we tried, we have 1 year. How long do we have, Olivia, before we have to have by November 2020.
Well, we need everything done by August.
By then, okay, by August. So we have from now to August to get this in a form that is legal. What we propose tonight is maybe not what's on there permanently. We're making proposals. If they're legal, then we're gonna end up voting on them, whether they're gonna be on the ballot. But if they're illegal, we have to change them. And, we like when people show up. It's nice having a crowd. And we do like having your input. This is not just us. We want your input as to, you've heard the recommendations I've made, Ms. Villalobos has made. I mean, now it's take them home. Nothing's being decided tonight. Well, this is just ideas that we're throwing out there to make our charter better, so that there are not going to be questions when an election happens. Oh, the charter says this, but the state law says that. We're going to bring it into compliance with state law, and we're going to be bringing ideas that we have that we think would make it better. We'll listen to you all, and whatever ideas you have that you think will make it better, we want to listen to it, because we tried for how long? I mean, I brought this up even before I was in council about a charter commission. Am I 3 minutes up? No? Okay. I brought this up years before, and they've tried. Mayor Garcia put together a charter commission. Nobody wanted to be part of it. Well, some people did, but not enough to do anything. So, I mean, we either sit back and continue till another election with a flawed document, we get to work and get it done with the input of public.
May I be allowed to ask another question? In regards to what you're saying?
Make a motion to allow Mr. Cox to address council.
Second.
The question
We
is,
got to vote. We got to vote.
René Rodríguez is absent, Cesar Nevares,
Yes.
Ralph Duran.
Yes,
Victor Pérez is absent, and Iván Colombia López.
Yes.
Mr. Cox.
the question is, how transparent were you guys when you guys decided to put a commission together for the city charter that everyone was aware? Because I just became aware here recently, very recently, that you guys were proposing something. And I don't have a problem with being on a commission like this, because I do follow rules, and I like to make sure that everything's done right, and I do my homework, like Mrs. Yvonne does. But I never heard about you guys trying to do this as far as a transparent order or request to the public, such as on Facebook, City of Socorro, or the website, whatever. Maybe I just missed it. How transparent were you? That's the question.
Ms. Villalobos?
No, go ahead and answer.
Mr. Duran?
We did. I mean, when did we put together the Charter Advisory Commission?
It's been almost a year. We have one person. We have one appointment.
And we had one appointee. Two appointees. Nobody else wanted to do it. So it was voted on by council. It was proposed and voted on. I think it was unanimous. So nobody's hiding anything. It's just nothing was done. So we have to get it moving. And right now's the time, if we are letting you know what's going to be on our next meeting, bring your suggestions. Now's the time. We're not trying to, sneak anything under you.
Mr. Arte?
What I want to add is, this is our first workshop. So whatever proposing, items that they're bringing, at the next meeting, we will have it in the backup. Whatever proposed, and then at the end, you will be able to see what everyone's proposing, and then they'll get to vote what changes they do wanna go with and what they don't wanna go with. But this is our first workshop, so you wouldn't see anything on the backup. I think the last meeting, we had the charter attached to it, but since they've all had their charters, now we're just working off the sections. So next meeting, you'll see the proposed changes that they made in your backup, and we can kind of just look at it.
Ms. Villalobos?
Also, I want to share with you, Mr. Cox, and the audience that is here, that we also requested that even our own employees let us know what changes they need, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. We don't know what what part of the charter affects them in a negative way, so I would like to hear from them too. And if you would like to sit down with me, we can sit down a week before. Anybody's welcome. We can meet. You just tell me, we can meet, we can sit down, and you can give me your ideas. What I did this time around is I went to several municipals and read, and even called some of my friends that are out there and picked their brain, because I like to hear how they, why they operate the way they do. And so I'm sorry I only brought, I thought I had done the whole thing. I only did you know, the first 3 paragraphs, that's it, but it was through page 15. I didn't, and it took me a long time, trust me, a lot of hours, just to do those little pages there. And they're just ideas, that, somebody already invented the wheel, but I don't know, and it mimics somewhat our charter, and they are also home rule municipal. That, anyways, I thought that it would work perfectly with our city, but you're more than welcome. I don't think I'm out of I mean, Mr. Martinez, I'm not, violating anything by inviting them to sit with me regarding the charter? Okay. I'm more than happy to come to you, or we can get together, those that are here that are, you know, want to be part of this, and I can be your voice.
We have another speaker.
Thank you. And one more, can we still form a committee if people start getting interested?
It's been formed, we just need to get people appointed.
Okay, so it can be done. We just started.
In the past, it was 5 members. 5 people were asked to become a part of that committee.
Mhm.
And yes, we had committees, and we've changed the city charter rules. There's a lot of rules in there that need to be changed. I'll give you the recall procedure, the protocol for recall. That was done, in my opinion, to benefit people that were in office at the time, making it impossible to collect enough signatures for a petition to recall the individual in council. That's gotta be changed. That was done to benefit another set of council people who were here.
Right, and
I don't
so,
know if you knew that or not, or not.
yeah, if anybody's interested, please let me know. I'll set a date aside and, you know, a week before and tackle it
Are
on.
you the chairperson?
No, sir, I'm not.
Who's the chairperson of this committee?
We don't have enough people appointed right now. We only had 2 people appointed, so that's why they were never able to get any meetings. Every council person was supposed to appoint 1 person.
And in fairness, I've asked many people, and they just can't attend, including my other, you know, they just can't attend. I've asked a lot of people, they're not interested. Ms. Cruz?
Thank you, Ms. Navarro. I wanted to mention, I was hoping that we could add the articles that we're going to be discussing at each meeting and the actual action item. That way the public does know what we're going to focus on. Obviously, it doesn't limit us to what you're going to talk about, but I think that helps the public to know that you're going to be focusing on, you know, page 1 through 60 or whatever, or if you want to do it by articles, to the agenda. I don't know how I feel about the 12 months in the district yet. Probably makes sense, but I also think it might limit some people who decide to buy a house and happen to move houses, you know. But anyway, as far as section, let's see, what was it? I already scrolled down. Oh, Article 3.04, Part O, which was discussed by Mr. Luran, which was eliminating for good cause order to a recall election with respect to any member of the city council. I think actually what we should do instead of eliminating is actually define what good cause is. And I think there's a few things that most people, I feel like 99% of people can agree what good cause would be, which is probably something illegal or breaking some of the rules or whatever it may be. I think there are actually some things that we can all agree on that we could expand good cause to. And I look forward to hearing more of your ideas and sharing mine. Thanks.
Ms. Villalobos?
Thank you, Miriam. I totally agree with you. Let's put pages, because I misheard, misunderstood, whatever the case. If not, I would have continued on to page 15. This does not have page 15. The other thing I wanted to say was having to do with she's right. I don't think we should ding somebody that moves from one district to another and they've lived here, 6 years in Socorro. Just because they moved districts. There's no difference. I don't think we should ding them for that, if that's the, go ahead.
Mr. Duran?
The problem with that is, let's say you have a friend who you want in city council, will move into that district, and then there'll be stacking of council. And regards to what Ms. Cruz brought up, what I want to do is put the power of the recall back in the hands of the constituents. You all are the ones that elected us. You should be the only ones that can get rid of us. That's why in the you will be allowed to elect them. And we'll be saving you $26,000 every time that happens. Okay, well, no, that's already covered in another section. If they lose the qualifications to be on city council or anything, they can be removed, and it does have for felonies. It's on, hold on. Yeah, section 3.02, paragraph D. If you lose the qualifications to be a candidate or to be on city council, then you can be removed. So what I want to do is I want to take, I mean, right now, I don't want 3 members of council to remove somebody on the good cause. What is good cause? He didn't show up to a meeting. That's good cause. Let's get rid of him. We can't have that. We have to have very specific language to prevent abuse. And if you get the wrong people up here, they will abuse it. So that's why I want to remove it and put the elections back in the hands of the constituents.
But getting back to moving to district.
Ms. Velos?
I'm sorry, that would be very expensive for me to tell somebody, move over there, sell your house and move over there. That'd be very
No,
expensive.
I'm not saying for that. I'm saying for stacking a city council. Let's say that, oh, I want this person and that person and that person. You just moved over there, you know. You don't know the needs of your district until you've lived there. You don't know what roads there are. You don't know what, and this way, we don't need to be stacking or giving people the option to stack a city council by just moving somebody around. They have an apartment. Oh, I have an apartment over there. Let me rent it to you. That way you can run and be on council with me. We don't need that. We need to have where you know your district, you live in it, and you're going to go represent it. That's it. Not represent somebody else on council. And this will eliminate that.
And you make a good point.
Ms.
You
Velos?
really do. It's a good point. Mr. Martinez, would you look into that? See if it's, if we're violating, by doing that, violating any Texas laws?
Yes, ma'am, that was what I mentioned about the election codes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you both make good points. You know, how do we make it fair?
One other thing, when you pick up your paperwork to run for a candidate, it gives you all the rules, everything that you have to follow on paperwork that you have to sign. And in there, it also states that you have to be residing in the area that you're gonna live in, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a while for me, so I don't know, it might have changed. But when you pick up when you first file for candidacy to run for District 1, District 4, whatever, in there it gives you all the requirements. So that's already covered by election code. But yes, there are things that you're asking that need to be reviewed before you can even push these things. You need the election code in there.
And rest assured that everything that we do and before it's approved, I'm sure it's going to run through our attorneys first to make sure that, you know, this charter is not in violation.
Mayor,
Mr. Martinez?
now for one thing. This is I hate to, as a lawyer, I hate to raise a policy issue. This is a policy issue for council to address, but it occurs to me because I'm usually the one charged with delivering bad news when a council asks. Council may want to consider changing 3.07D, which is the location of meetings. From time to time I'm asked, we're talking to the county, we're talking to the city of El Paso, we're talking to the city of Horizon, or the Lower Valley Water District, we want to have a joint meeting, can we do that? And my answer is always, well, yeah, if they come here, sure. Or there's an emergency, because otherwise you don't have the option to do that.
Okay.
Add that to it.
Yes.
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 Item number 24, discussion and action on fiscal year 2019-2020 budget for all City of Socorro departments, including revenue projections for fiscal year 2019-2020.
I'll come.
Ms. Villalobos?
Just, Mr. Casiano, any changes that you are excited to tell us about?
I'm always excited to tell you about the budget. Again, my name is Charles Casiano. I'm the finance director here for the city of Socorro. And I know you guys have probably been having trouble sleeping knowing that we were going to talk about the budget today.
Yes.
And the fact that Mr. Rodriguez left has left me hurt. I just have to share that with you. But we have on the very first page, you should see something that says assumptions in the upper left-hand corner. I know it's always bad to assume, but this is what we did. The first assumption that we did is that we're going to recommend the rollback rate. Now, that's an interesting term. It just means that we get to increase from the effective tax rate to the rollback rate, which is approximately 8%. Now, these terms are going to change starting in fiscal year 2021, and I think it's very important that you as council people are aware of this. They're going to change the names of these things. One's going to be called the what is it, the voter? Basically, you have to go to vote. If you want to increase the tax rate more than 3.5%, starting in fiscal year 2021, it has to be voted on. That should scare you a little bit. Okay. All right. And so the effective rate is going to have a new name, and the rollback rate is going to have a new name because the 3.5% is automatic. It goes to the voters. Right now, if we were to propose a 10% increase, it would still require the citizenry to do a petition for an election on that. But coming in the fiscal year 2021, directly to an election. Anyways, that's the bad news.
Okay.
Okay?
Ms.
So are you,
Villalobos?
I'm sorry, are you saying we have to take it to the voters? So we have to have,
In fiscal year 2021,
okay,
if you increase the effective tax rate by 3.5% or more, it's got to go to the voters.
which would cost the city money?
Well, it's going to be part of the next election.
Okay,
Okay?
okay.
Yeah.
And how often?
Well, we do that. We look at this every year.
So let's say not an election year, it would cost the city
It
money
would,
to go?
yes, yes.
And it would, right, only if we're gonna go over it. And that cost is más o menos? 28,000?
We go anywhere from 23 to 28, so that's part of the
Wow.
thing.
So that defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do over here, which is, well, one part of it, which is save money to the city.
Well, it's an interesting conundrum because now we have to think in terms of how should we use up our reserves, how can we build them back up if we're limited like that. So that's just an added component to what we need to discuss as we go forward. The second item there is a 2% proposed cost of living adjustment for employees based on who's no longer a probationary employee or if they've been received a promotion within the last 6 months of the end of the fiscal year. So that 2% is based roughly on what the Social Security index does every year. And for this past year, they increased 2.8%. We're only advocating for a 2% increase. But that is totally and completely under your purview. Should you decide to give us a 6% increase, thank you. Or 1%, still thank you. So that's just something we've thrown out there. It's about it impacts the general fund about $86,000, roughly. And the next item is that the merit raise increases are possible within the structure of how we come up with the budget and everybody's pay rate. We add a fudge factor in there just to indicate that we can cover these merit raises as they come through the year. And that's why you'll see, like for me, the amount for me is not exactly what I get paid right now. It's a little bit more because I'm such a good employee, I'm likely to get another, huge raise coming up. Might, yes. So that's just the preliminaries. The very next page is going to be.
You're going about it the wrong way, sir.
No, the next page will be the real exciting stuff. But to just go over the entire budget kind of by department, let's start with the city manager, because you're going to see that the city manager's budget has increased significantly. And the reason for that is that certain employees are now under her department. The two custodians previously were under Parks and Public Works. They're now under this budget. The two maintenance technicians also were in the Parks and Public Works, and they are also going to be under her. And the mechanic and an assistant, which are in the budget, are also being transferred from Parks and Public Works to her. And we're going to change the compensation of the executive assistant to a non-exempt position. In other words, she'll be getting paid overtime. The impact on this is not listed because it's just a wash between this department and the Parks and Public Works. Looking at Parks and Public Works, it's a wash. In other words, the impact, the city manager's budget is going to increase $200,000. Well, the Parks and Public Works is going to decrease $200,000. So that the general fund impact is zero.
In other words, the employees are only moving from one department to the other. We're not increasing their pay, we're just moving them.
Yeah, but if you look at the city manager, we have last year's to this year's, and you're going to see a huge number there for it. That's why. Public Works, of course, we just talked about what's going to happen. Just so you know, the significant equipment we're going to use the capital projects fund to pay for anything that's significant there. And again, the custodians, the maintenance people have moved to the city manager. We have included in this budget that the administrative assistant go from part-time to full-time, and that increase would be about $15,800, and that the supervisory salary increase we're making an adjustment to his pay at about $10,000. So the impact would be an overall increase of $25,800.
Who's the supervisor? Okay.
He was here earlier, but if we look at the police next, it's we're going to purchase a modular unit, and that's going to happen. We've already approved it through the capital projects funds, and the installation of that unit will come through their asset forfeiture awards that they've received over time. If you look at the detail, I know you're going to want to do this as soon as you get home, is look at the detail of the police positions. We show 3 vacant positions. Actually, there's 4. As I was doing this, I was told that the police department was fully staffed, and about 3 seconds later, they weren't. Anyway.
I count 6. 6 vacant.
On
6
the,
vacancies.
okay. There's 3 corporals there.
So in reality, it's only 3.
Correct, that we're adding on to the budget, these 3 additional offices.
So that impact is $180,000. The one additional records clerk to get the information to the district attorney faster, that will impact the department by about $40,000. And we're budgeting $200,000 for however many vehicles we can get for that amount, for hopefully 4.
Are 2 of those positions the ones that we're gonna get grants for, or that's separate?
But we haven't been awarded yet, so.
So in other words, there'll be 2.
So it would be the 2 positions, so right now we're gonna we're actually adding.
If I may, we're looking at the general fund, and since those are grants, those expenses and that income would be in the special revenue fund, and that's not what we're looking at right now. But those 2 positions are in there, in the special revenue. Municipal court, we're requesting the part-time employee there to go to full-time with an impact of about $20,000, because as they go from part-time to full-time, we then pay benefits. So, and transferring the bailiff position to the court payroll would be about a $75,000 impact. Moving on to the planning and zoning, the service contracts have been increased by $30,000 on the expense side, but we got to keep in mind that they're going to pass through that cost to the engineering firm. So in the end, it's a wash, but since we're looking at the expenditure side right now, we need to show that. The city clerk, last year we didn't have any elections. This year we're showing 2, one for the general election and one for a runoff, just to have it in there in case. Then for the recreation centers, we're increasing the budget for advertising there by about $3,000 to help with the census push, and we're also replenishing the community center with newer computers at a cost of about $14,000. In the grants department, we're including a grants assistant at a part-time at about $21,500. The information technology people, they're the problem. We love these people, but They're always asking for money. So additional service contract to assist with the work at $20,000. We're going to purchase him a vehicle with the capital projects fund, so it's not going to impact the general fund. $35,000 for the 365 implementation integration of Windows and all our email service, so it's going to be $35,000. Security at $25,000, and getting us a higher version of Adobe for certain individuals at $3,000. So the overall impact from one year to the next is about $820,000. Any questions? Now, Mr. Perez did not like us calling it a wish list, so we're referring to it now as the staff request list. Okay. All right, the next page that we need to look at is the tax rate, just so you know what I know, which, you know, and it looks like this. It's a landscape document. So while we're preparing the budget, we received some information from the Central Appraisal District, and it says the 2019 preliminary totals for the city of Socorro, the net taxable amount is $1,019,300. But I like nice round numbers, so in the fiscal year 2020, where it says no change, we're looking at an assessed valuation there of $1 billion. That's what I used. Now, we don't have yet from the CAD the effective tax rate and the rollback rate. So this is my version of what they might look like. Okay? So unfortunately, since last year, we're in a situation where the assessed value is going up. That's a positive thing. Unfortunately, it affects our tax rate by forcing it down when we look at the effective rate. Now, the effective rate doesn't really exist. It's a calculation, but it's an important calculation going forward. So if the effective rate goes down, let's say to 0.72, an 8% increase would be about 0.78. And that's what we're recommending, is that we come up, that we use whatever the rollback rate that we come up with. I'm hoping it's at least 0.78, and use that for this next year, this next fiscal year. And that's our recommendation there. Any questions?
And just to add, these are very preliminary numbers. We have not received actual numbers. So we're just making calculations based on the information that we receive from the preliminary numbers. That might change. Again, this is our first budget workshop. We're gonna have several before you adopt. So we're giving you our request list, and then you come back next workshop and say, no, we're gonna cut this. We're not gonna give you this.
Yeah, we can call Mr. Duran the chopper there, yeah.
Look at him. That's what he's good at right there, the chopper. Call him the chopper.
The chopper.
Yep.
The next page then is the general fund revenues, just to give you a sense of where we're at. On the rightmost column, it says the proposed budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. The bottom line is, in order for us to cover the expenses and the increases in expenses that we just went through, we're looking at a total budget of $10,320,000. Now, there's a highlighted item there, and it says prior year's revenue. Let's just call it reserve. That's the reserve that we have that's accumulated over time. It's also known as the fund balance. And every month you get a fund balance calculation that I include in there. So we're going to be taking out of that fund balance calculation $1.181 million in order to balance with the expenses. That's what it's going to take out of the reserve. Now, if you just look, just to give you some context, if you look at the fiscal year 2018, if you look at that budget, it was revised to 1.079 million. But when you look at it with the actual, we just got the audit, and it came back with just a deficit of $278,000. Okay, so we put this together, but that doesn't mean we're going to spend everything that's in there.
And sometimes that consists of, you have vacancies, people leave. We take a time to hire the people that we add. So all of that is salary savings, so we do the budget amendments every quarter.
We've also had a situation where we budget for certain equipment, find it cheaper, and has saved us a lot of money in the past, especially in that year. So any questions on the earnings or the revenue?
No, you just need to bring the chopper over there, donuts, coffee, a big smile.
I need a red pen.
But,
A red pen. A red pen.
but it's so important to have that to be able to question everything. So
You might need several red pens.
yeah.
I'll bring 6.
Now, if we look at the next page, it says it's the revenue side for the special revenue fund. These are the grants that we get in, and some of the other monies that come in. We have a lot of police action here, all the different things that they're part of. And what we do with these is that we show it as revenue, and whatever amount we show as revenue, we show as expense, because 90% of those are grant reimbursements. Okay, and so that's why these funds are shown that way. The biggest, it says other revenue. That is a wish. That is for some ambulances that we could actually own. But we're, just because we asked for the grant doesn't mean we're going to get it. But we can hope. The very next page is our baby. This is just, it's a thing of beauty. I get a little misty just thinking about it and looking at it. But it is our combined general fund expenditures. See, Mr. Nevares, he understands. He understands. So as you look through, and you can see that the top part, and it's always important to know and to look at the total personnel cost. A city, a municipality, most governments, they'll run anywhere from 60 to 70% of their total budget is there. It's people. It takes people to run the government, and that's where the bulk of the money is. And if you have a year in which you're buying a lot of equipment, then that cost relatively will go down. But if you don't have a lot of equipment, then it'll stay in that 60 to 70 range.
See what you did?
Is it something I said? I don't know.
See what you did?
Do we need to take a break? I know it's pretty exciting stuff. No?
Let's keep going.
Break? I mean a quick break. I make a motion, can I make a motion to take a 5-minute break? And I mean a 5-minute, can somebody time it? No, I'm just kidding. Can I get a second?
It starts now.
Do we have a second?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.